What's going on, guys? My name is Brandon. I'm an assistant coach with the U17 boys provincial team, and I'm an assistant coach at the University of Alberta, working with the Golden Bears. And what if I told you that you could play basketball without actually playing basketball at home? So today we're going to talk about a little topic called motor imagery. And motor imagery is probably something everybody does on their own. Maybe you call it like visualization or imagery or something like that. But today we're going to kind of talk about improving that skill and then using it to your advantage while you're at home. You can kind of do this anywhere, and you can use it to improve your shooting, your ball handling, your vision, your ability to use screens or do different concepts or play in transition. Whatever it is that you want to do, you can use motor imagery to help with that. So what is motor imagery? It's basically an enhanced version of visualization. So if you think of visualization, the key word there is visual. It's only the visual aspect that you're kind of imagining in your mind. The important things about motor imagery or imagery itself is that you're engaging multiple senses. So now all of a sudden, instead of just the image, now you're thinking about the sounds you're hearing. Okay, what are your teammates saying to you? Is there a crowd? Is there an audience? What are your parents saying? What's your mom yelling at you? What are your coaches saying? What are you saying? Those are all types of things that you want to include. What are you feeling? So a big part of motor imagery and improving motor skills is how do you engage the muscles. So if I image myself from a kind of first person point of view, myself shooting the basketball, and I imagine myself shooting and I'm trying to engage and feel the muscles all the way up through my body, from my feet all the way up to my arms, and trying to shoot the basketball and imagine the key points of emphasis of like where I need to be in terms of my shot. Maybe it's my elbow, maybe I'm working on my follow through, my extension, maybe I'm working on my lift, maybe I'm working on some kind of backspin or hand placement on the ball. All of those things you can imagine in your mind and try and actually feel them in your arms. So for example, without actually raising your arm or putting the ball in like normally you would with a shot pocket, if you close your eyes and try and imagine yourself doing those movements and actually try and start to feel those muscles moving without actually moving. It's a really weird sensation, but there's a lot of research that shows that in doing motor imagery, we're actually activating the same parts of the brain that are activated in actual movement execution. So in actual practice, you can do motor imagery to improve certain skills without performing those actual skills. So that's kind of what motor imagery is. I want to talk about how you can do it, where we've kind of talked about that a little bit. The first thing you kind of want to do is find a quieter space, and you kind of want to gear up. So, grab whatever you need to do, whatever you would normally wear playing basketball. All you really need, maybe you're just grabbing a basketball, you're holding a basketball in your hands, and you're using that. Maybe you're working on some ball handling, and just the feel of holding the basketball will enhance those kind of senses and sensation of using motor imagery. Some other things you can do is you can put your jersey on, you can grab your basketball shoes, you can put those on, and you don't have to go anywhere. You're sitting or you're lying, but you're in a kind of quiet space and you're going through your imagery in different scenarios. The last thing you kind of want to do is pick something so that you can stay focused on it, so that your mind doesn't kind of evolve into so many different things. That would be a good place to start. One of the reasons I really like motor imagery is because you can take this skill, and it doesn't have to be just about basketball. It can be about whatever you want to do in your life. You can use this skill to get better and help you out. And you don't need to be outside. You don't need to be with other people. You can do this at night when you're laying down in bed. You can do this in the morning when you wake up. You can do this at breakfast. Okay, let's talk about some quick tips on using motor imagery. So the first is be creative. So you never want to be using imagery on the same situation over and over and over again, because it's like practicing skills, right? You want to kind of imagine yourself in different situations performing different skills. Maybe one time you're coming up the right side of the floor, maybe one time you're coming up the left side of the floor. So kind of imagine different situations that you might find yourself in the game, or situations that you've never found yourself in the game, to kind of prepare yourself and say, what, I've been there before. I can do those things because I've imagined myself in those situations, and I can overcome this challenge. Another thing is timing. So when you're imaging things, you want to make sure that the timing that you're imaging it at is as close to the timing as in real life. So a lot of times when you try and imagine something, it's really easy to do it in slow motion, but it's a lot more difficult to imagine it at full speed and everything that's going on. So that's something you can kind of build up to as you use motor imagery. The last thing is, you kind of like we talked about earlier, is prepare. So write down a list of things that maybe work for you and that you want to go through. And then the other thing would be to prepare for any kind of negative situations or be prepared to fail. You know, it's likely you're going to miss more than half of the shots you take. Well, what happens after you miss? Right? What's your body language like? How do you respond? You can go through all those situations using motor imagery as basically like a test ground. Like, how are you going to react? But at least you've been there before, so the next time you come and play a game, whether it's in August or November, or whenever we get to play games again, you've been in those situations before and you understand how to handle yourself. Motor imagery, it's like every skill. It takes a lot of getting used to, it takes a lot of practice. You know, at first, maybe you try it for 2-3 minutes and that's all you can do. And then after that, maybe the next time you sit down, maybe it's 3 minutes, and then maybe it's 4 minutes. And eventually you're able to imagine, you know, yourself, 4 teammates, 5 defenders, there's a hoop, there's a crowd, there's a big stage, and all of a sudden you're playing a 5-on-5 game of basketball, getting better at basketball because you're activating all of those areas in the brain without actually playing basketball. So that's my short-ish talk on motor imagery. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm L3Brock on Twitter.